In which war did you serve?
World War II, Vietnam, and Korea.
And what was your branch of service?
Able seaman in the Merchant Marine.
And what was your highest rank?
Able seaman.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
Well, you might call it enlist. I was down at a bar, and the Navy turned me down because of a scar on my head. So when World War II came on, I was talking to some fellas down at the bar, and they said, "Why don't you join the Merchant Marine?" I said, "What the heck is the Merchant Marine?" They said, "It's cargo ships and tankers and passenger ships." He said, "Get down to New York and you can sign up." So I went down to New York and I signed up, and they took me and put me in Sheepshead Bay, where I got my training and I got my ordinary seaman papers, and then I started shipping out.
Where were you living at the time?
Right here in Waterbury.
And how old were you?
19.
Why did you choose the Navy to enlist?
Not the Navy.
But being on the ship.
Merchant Marine.
Why did you choose, the naval branch of service?
Well, I always liked the sea, and I always wanted to go on submarines. But when I tried to enlist for submarine service, they wouldn't give it to me. They said they'd put me on a destroyer, and I said no, and I didn't go. So then when they told me about the Merchant Marine, I said, well, I might as well go out there and do that. So I went and signed up for that in 1942.
Then they sent you to Sheepshead Bay?
Yes, that was the school where they train you for seamanship.
Is that like boot camp?
Yeah.
So how was that?
Kind of rough, because, being a city person and then you get on these boats and stuff and do different things, it's kind of rough. But I learned everything, and they showed you all different things, how to row a boat, how to put on a life jacket in case you're bombed, how to tie knots and stuff like that.
How did you handle the stress and of this experience, of the boot camp training experience?
Pretty well. Yeah, it went very good. I think I was there for about 2 months or so.
Do you remember any of your instructors?
No.
Did you feel well prepared after you left?
Oh yeah, definitely. They sent me down to Norfolk, Virginia, and the first ship I got on was on a coal boat, and we sailed up the coast to Boston. We got to the Cape Cod Canal, and it was frozen. So the captain wouldn't listen to the Coast Guard, and he tried to make it through. And he was breaking the ice and all that, and he couldn't make it, and we turned around. He broke the plates on the front of the ship, and we were taking on water. So when we got to Boston, And when I got paid, I told him, I said, I quit. And I went home. I don't want to be with a captain that takes chances like that. Then I got on a ship and went to England. And that's when we were taking Army supplies like tanks, ammunition, food, and stuff like that.
Now, was this your first experience on a ship? Was enlisting in the Merchant Marines?
Yes.
Did you feel sick or cramped?
I got sick once. And the cook told me, he said, keep on eating. And I kept heaving, and after the 5th or 6th time, I got better, and that was the only time I ever got sick. I never got sick after that. And I've been in some rough weather. We've been in hurricanes in the Pacific, and I'm telling you, I was scared stiff because I didn't think we'd make it through it, but we did.
Even being on such a huge ship, you still felt...
The waves would come over the bow and they'd hit the bridge of the ship. They were waves that were 20 to 40 feet deep.
So was going to England, was that your first mission, your first official?
That was the first trip I made. Then after that I was going to different places. And my mother, you know, the Italian people always had visitors, so they all had coffee. And this woman came in and she said to my mother, you know, you're crazy, Mr. Cristello, letting your son go out to sea like that. He could get killed out there. So when I came home from the ship, my mother was crying, and she said, you know, it's very dangerous out there. I said, what are you talking about? And so she told me about this woman that told her this story. So I went to this woman's house and I told her, I said, I hear you told my mother that I was crazy for going to sea. And she said, well, yeah, you are. I said, well, I only wish that your kids were 19, 20, and 21, and they were in North Africa fighting. And my ship was supposed to bring them ammunition and food and clothes. And I said, I ain't going there, it's too dangerous. And then your kids get shot because they didn't have the ammunition. How would you feel then? Tears come popping out of her eyes. So the next time she saw my mother, she said to my mother, your son is the greatest kid in the world. Sure, now that I told her what could have happened, you know. But I enjoyed it, and don't let anyone ever tell you that they weren't scared. A lot of times I was scared stiff, but it works out all right.
Speaking of being scared, being on your first mission to England, how did that feel?
Well, that wasn't bad. The first 2 or 3 trips, I never had any problems at all. It was later on that as we were crossing, I saw this tanker get hit and flames all over the place. Man, I ran down, put my life jacket on, and I sat in the lifeboat. And the captain, to this day, I'm pretty sure he said that he thinks we got hit by something because there was a big thump. And he put in the logbook that we were hit by a torpedo, but it was a dud. So to this day I always thank the Jewish people, because they were in those factories in Germany making these things, and they'd do something wrong so that the thing wouldn't fire. And that was probably one of the ones that hit my ship.
Interesting.
So I always say, boy, the Jews are pretty good people.
Was that the first time that you ever saw somebody else get hit and experience that?
That was the first and only time I ever saw it.
But then your boat almost...
Yeah, well, that was a bombing raid. We were in a port at that time, yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that time?
Well, we came into the port, and the longshoreman had all the lights on, and I believe the Germans over in France saw the lights and figured there was something going on. So the next morning at 5 o'clock they came over and started a bombing run, and they dropped a flare, and the flare went right into the smokestack of my ship. And then I saw these bombs coming down, and I said, God, please make them go another way. And it seemed as though a hand was pushing them away, and they went on the other side of the bank, and we didn't get a scratch on our ship.
Was there any other casualties? Did any other ships get bombed?
No, but the town got bombed. And when the authorities came aboard and we were talking, and he said to me that if you had gone into the bomb shelter and a bomb hit your ship, you would have been dead. I said, what? He said, anything within a half a mile to a mile of your ship would have been flattened out. There was that much ammunition and stuff on the ship.
Did you have any warnings that the German planes were coming?
No. The only warning we get is when we hear the sirens going off. Then we know that there's a raid coming, and everybody on the ship ran off the ship except me and this third mate. And we were just taking the fire hoses in case of a fire, you know, and we ran the fire hoses out.
Now, what was protocol on the ship if you knew a raid was coming? Were you supposed to stay on?
There is no, you know, you do what you think you have to do. And most guys run off the ship. I figured, what's the sense in running? Where can you go, you know? You're in a strange country and you don't know where it's going to be safe or where you're going to hide or anything like that, you know.
How many people were on your ship?
There's 42 crew members, officers and crew.
Do you recall the name of the ship you were on?
No, I don't remember the name of that one. But the name of the ship that I was on when I saw the other ship get torpedoed was the SS Maryland. Yeah.
Now, going across the ocean, was German U-boats or submarines ever a problem or a threat?
They always were.
Yeah.
We always saw these destroyers dropping depth charges because there were submarines around, you know. But like I say, I was very lucky where I made so many crossings, and I never had to get off of the ship into a lifeboat. And if you read those letters, the ones going to Norway, to Murmansk in Russia, if there were 100 ships, more than half of them were sunk going by Norway, because they'd come out with planes and bomb them, and their submarines would come out, and then they'd have their battleship, I don't know if it was the Tirpitz or one of them, that would come out and shoot them.
What were your other assignments during World War II? Did you go anywhere? So you were in England. Did you drop supplies off anywhere else?
Oh yeah, North Africa, Italy. I went to a little town in Bari, Italy. And that was where, when we were pulling in, you can see 5 or 10 sunken ships. And I asked somebody, how come all those ships were sunk? And they said there was one ship loaded with ammunition, and a bomber came over and dropped a bomb and hit that ship that was loaded with ammunition, and when that blew, it sunk all the ships within the area. And they said from 5 to 10 ships were sunk right there in Bari, Italy.
Now, did the Germans know which ships were ammunition ships?
No. They just bombed the ships to, sink them, because they knew they were the supply ships that were bringing supplies to the country,
So how was North Africa?
That was pretty bad.
Yeah.
The Arabs were always trying to steal from you. In fact, one of the sailors came back and he was almost naked because they stole all his clothes. All he had was his shoes and his shorts when he came out. But he was drunk as a skunk.
So you were able to get off ship and kind of explore the area?
Oh yeah, we were allowed to go ashore.
Was there any memorable moments or incidents, in between Italy or Africa that you remember being on land?
Not really. It was just, like you'd go to ashore and you'd go to a bar and have a few drinks, and then you come back and you do your work on the ship, and they'd have longshoremen there that were unloading it, and you'd make sure everything was going right,
So you served throughout the duration of World War II?
Oh yeah.
Were you discharged in between then?
Well, each time you came to New York or to your home port and they paid you off, you got a discharge. I looked all over the house. I can't find them. But I must have a stack about like that.
Wow.
'Cause,
and then you immediately re-enlisted?
well, then I'd come home for, a week or two, and then I'd go back out. Sometimes I'd stay home for a month. Then when I spent all my money, and I needed money, then I'd go back down and sign up again. You'd go down to the Union Hall, and they'd have a board there, and it'd give you all the names of the ships and what assignments they needed, So you have a card, and you throw in your card, but they don't tell you where that ship is going, because in a war, they don't let you know where it's going. So I throw in my card, and if my card is the oldest card, then I'd get the job. And that's what I would do every time I'd come home.
Did you enlist with any of your friends or any of your buddies?
Oh yeah, we used to. In fact, I've had quite a few of them come up to the house and visit. But I'll tell you one incident I had. That incident where we went to Guadalcanal and dropped off the Army and took the Marines off. Then we got to San Francisco, and because I signed on in New York and I paid off in San Francisco, the company has to pay my transportation back to the port of the beginning of the trip. So they gave us train tickets. So I took the train from San Francisco and we went to Chicago. When we got to Chicago, I got off and I had my bags and everything, and these two guys came over and they said to me, what's your name and where do you live and all this stuff? I said, who the heck are you? They said, we're FBI. I said, oh yeah? Show me your credentials. So they pulled out their identification. And I said, uh-oh, something's going on. So they said to me, these your bags? I said, yeah. They said, okay, get your bags and come with us. I said, why? They said, never mind, just come with us. So we go out, we get on a streetcar, and we go down a little ways, and then we get off, and we're walking down the street, and I'm still kind of suspicious because I've got a money belt, and I got $500 in there.
Wow.
And Chicago, you know. So we come to a street corner and there's a cop in the middle of the road, and I said, hey, I'm going to call that cop over here and make sure you guys are really FBI men. They said, why? Don't you believe us? I said, well, I'm kind of suspicious because you got me walking. And he said to me, look over there. And I looked over there, and there's this big plaque on the building, and it said Federal Bureau of Investigation. So they took me up there, and when we got in the elevator, this guy said, hey Mac, I see you got him, huh? So right then I knew that they were looking for somebody that looked like me. I had a big beard and all that, you know. So they took me upstairs, and you know, they asked me all different questions and all that. And then they found a big hunting knife. They said, do you mind if we take this and examine it? I said, no, go ahead. So they went and examined it and all. And then he came back and he said, well, you seem to be in the clear. I said, well, here's all my papers, here's my ticket, here's my discharge of where I was. And they said, okay, the reason that we picked you up was because we thought you were somebody else. But when you get back to Waterbury, go down and sign up for your, register for your draft. So I said, okay. So I get home, and I said to my mother, I'm going down to the barber shop and get a shave and a haircut. So I get out and get a shave and a haircut. I came back, and she said to me, there was two men here looking for you. I said, who were they? I don't know, but they were dressed up in suits. FBI. So I get in the car and I go right up to City Hall, and I told them I wanted to sign up for the draft. So they asked me questions and all that, blah, blah, blah. Then they made out the card, and I said, now, what does this set me up for? And they said, well, women and children will go to war before they'll take you. I said, what? They said, you don't have to worry about a thing. And out of the corner of my eye, I could see this guy sitting down over there, and he was going like that to the woman that was talking to me. So I figured that was the other FBI man there that was checking up to see if I got there all right. But that was one of the...
That's very strange.
Yeah.
Did you ever find out why?
It was somebody who killed someone with a knife. And they thought it was me trying to get out of town on the train. So that's why they took me up, you know.
Why did they have you go down to re-enlist? Why did they make sure
Well,
you did
after they did all the questioning, you know, they asked me if I had a draft card, and I told them, no, I don't know what the hell a draft card is. Because, you know, I signed up for the Merchant Marine, and nobody ever said that you have to sign up for the draft. So when they picked me up, they questioned me on all different things, and then they said, where's your draft card? I said, what draft card? I don't have a draft card. So they said, well, when you get back to Waterbury, make sure you go to City Hall and sign up for a draft card.
Very strange story.
Yep.
Well, we'll backtrack about you being in Australia and the Guadalcanal. Now, is that a dangerous area?
Very.
How did you feel about going into a combat zone like that?
In the Pacific, I felt a lot safer than I did in the Atlantic. In the Pacific, it was, you know, so big that you wouldn't think that there'd be any ship sunk, you know. But I have, in the Pacific, I never had any problems at all. It was always in the Atlantic where we had all the trouble and all that. Because of the weather and the German submarines, there were so many of them. In the Pacific, they didn't have... See, most of the problems were between the Philippines and Japan, and we never went that way. Well, my ships didn't. Mine went like to Australia and Guadalcanal and places like that.
How long did it take you to sail to the Guadalcanal?
Well, we left New York, went through the Panama Canal, then we stopped in San Diego, because you have to pick up fuel and food. And then we go to Hawaii, and we pick up more food and more oil, and then we go down. So it takes about 8 to 10 days.
What did you do to pass the time?
Well, on the ship you always play cards and stuff like that, you know, and different things. But it's usually you have something to do, and then you have your work you have to do that. like your painting and maintenance of the ship and all that.
So once you got to Australia, you dropped the army off?
No, at Guadalcanal.
Guadalcanal.
Yeah. And then we picked up the 1st Marine Division from there, and we brought some of them to Hawaii and some to San Francisco.
How long were you actually, docked at the canal for?
Oh, maybe you don't stay in port too long. Maybe a day and a half, 2 days, maybe 3 days,
I bet those Marines were pretty happy to leave.
They sure were.
Now, did you have enough supplies for them once they boarded the ship?
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely.
And was your ship usually well supplied for yourself? And
Yep.
so you served through World War II. When did you see any action in Korea?
No action at all. All I did was brought supplies and stuff like that, like tanks and ammunition and food and beer, of course. You always had to bring beer for the army.
Yup. Now, was it as dangerous dropping supplies off in Korea as it was, in England or?
No. No, in Korea it was very calm and peaceful, no bombings, no nothing.
Did you have any close calls?
No,
That's good.
other than the weather. The hurricanes were very bad out there.
That's the Pacific, correct?
Yeah.
And then you served into the 60s and through Vietnam?
Right up until about 72, I think it was, when I got out.
What was your first impressions of Vietnam?
Well, I didn't... It's a lot different than here. There they do everything by hand, whereas here we do everything mechanically. I've seen women down there pushing ore carts by hand. And there was one woman that was pregnant, and she had her baby right there on the job. I couldn't believe it. Right there by the docks.
Did she have any assistance?
Well, the other women helped her out, other than that. And then the next day she went to work again. It's not like here. Here, they take time off for weeks and weeks.
Now, how old were you when you were dropping supplies off in Vietnam?
Oh, I don't remember that.
You must have been about 40 years, in your 40s,
Probably.
right? What did you think of, the young sailors, the young merchant marines?
Well, they were all about my age.
Okay.
Yeah, there wasn't, they're all about the same. We had young ones and we had old ones, and we'd all go out together, when we got in port.
There's a camaraderie.
Yeah. You meet different people. Like I said, I'd go on different ships and you'd meet different people. But after the war, World War II I'm talking about, then you can pick a ship that was going anywhere you wanted to go. In other words, they'd have on the board, and it'd say, this ship is going to South America, Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay. And another job would say, this ship is going to Africa, India, and then back home. So you can pick where you wanted to go. So in the wintertime, I try to get ships that were going south, so I'd be in warm weather. And in summer, I try to get ships that were going like to Europe or places like that where the weather was good.
What was one of the most memorable places that you visited or that you docked at?
I liked England, Italy, and Australia.
Now, backing up a little bit, how did you feel about the anti-war, during the Vietnam War, the anti-war opposition at home, and you serving in the military, dropping supplies off? Was there any conflicting feelings?
No. I always thought, you know, it was a job I had to do, and I just did it.
Did you have any feelings towards those anti-war protesters?
No.
No run-ins at all?
Nope.
That's good. How did you stay in touch with your family?
By mail.
By mail. What was the food like on the ship?
Very good.
It was.
Oh, yeah. We, in fact, to this day, everybody wonders why I don't like ham and I don't like steaks. Because on the ship, we had ham and we had steaks twice a week. So I'm sick of it, you know. So they, oh, why don't you like ham? Well, I've had so much of it that I don't care for it anymore. But the food was very... Once in a while you'd get a ship where the cook wasn't too good. But otherwise, all the cooks were very good and the food was excellent.
Good.
Yeah.
How did you handle the pressure or the stress of the job, especially during those high tense moments?
You'd go along with it just like you would on a regular job at home, you know. You just have to struggle along.
Mm-hmm. Did you have anything for good luck, a medal or any good luck charm?
No, no, not really.
No. Did you see any USO shows?
No. No, because you see, where we are on the docks, you'd have to go into the Army bases in order to see them, you know. And all these Hummels, those are all from Germany.
Oh.
Yep. In fact, my insurance man came in and he saw that and he said, you know, you ought to put that down as something else because they won't know that you have expensive things like that in your house.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Did you go on leave at all? Of course you did.
Well, yeah, every time the ship came into port, into New York, and we signed our discharge, then you'd go home and whenever you, like I said, when I was broke, I'd go back on the ship.
Did you do anything special when you came home on leave?
Yeah, go down to the bar and drink up with all my buddies.
Nothing wrong with that.
No.
Do you recall any particularly humorous or unusual events?
I went to India, and I call this story The Lying Nun. We were on our way to India, and we stopped in Egypt to unload the ship. And after we unloaded, we pulled out and went through the canal. We have to clean the holes out, so when we get to the next port, they can load cargo in there. So I found a bag of rice, either 50 or 100 pounds. So I took it and hid it, but it was Egyptian. So when we got to Calcutta, India, the nuns come aboard to ask for different things, you know. And the guys always give them clothes that they bring from home and all that for the orphanage. So I asked the nun, I said, can you use a bag of rice? Oh yeah, she said, we can use that. I said, but you know, it's from Egypt. Oh, don't worry about it. So we brought it down, we put it in our station wagon. So I said to her, where's the Seamen's Club? She says, well, it's about a block away from our orphanage. If you want to ride up there, we'll give you a ride up. I said, all right. So after they loaded up their station wagon with the food and everything else, we go to the gate, and the customs man comes over. And he says, what do you got? Oh, she said, we got some soap and clothes and stuff like that, and some food. So he said, open the tailgate. So she opened up the tailgate. And there were 3 pots there with stew. So he uncovered one of the pots and he said, what's in here? And she said, pork. He dropped the lid, shut the thing down, and he said, get out, get out. So we pulled out. And as we're going out, I said to the nun, I said, you know, you told him a lie. You're not supposed to lie. She said, God knows why I lied. She said, because that's food for the kids. I said, but that was beef stew. That wasn't pork. She said, yeah, but God knows why I said it. And I got a big kick out of that.
Now, why would she lie about that? Would they have confiscated it?
Well, if they had seen the rice, which was Egyptian, that was contraband. Mm-hmm. So they would have taken it, and then they would have arrested them, you know. Oh. So that's why she said it was pork.
She's smart.
Oh, yeah.
What did you think of your officers and your fellow servicemen?
Most of them were very good. I probably 2 or 3 that were no good, but most of them I got along with very good. In fact, when we had the tornado here, I was in Bremen, Germany, and the radio operator came down and says, hey Nick, he said, do you live anywhere near the Waterville Lumber Company? I said, yeah, that's about a quarter of a mile away from my house. He said, well, it was hit by a tornado. I said, oh, okay, but that's away from my house. That's nowhere near it. So we're coming to New York, and I get another wire, and it said, house badly damaged, Randy and I are okay. So when the radio operator gets a message, he always shows it to the captain. I didn't know this. So when I went up to the wheelhouse to bring the ship into port in New York. He said to me, I hear you had a little tornado at your house. I said, yeah. I said, the house was badly damaged. He said, do you have enough money to get home? I said, yeah, I've got enough money. He said, because if you need any money, I'll have the person give you money to get home. I said, no, that's all right. So we docked the ship, and I was talking to the first mate, and the first mate said, well, you can't go home because you got to wait until after you get paid, and then you can go home. But in my mind, I'm saying, as soon as this ship docks, I'm going home. I don't give a damn about anything. So I go back up to the wheelhouse, and the captain said to me, as soon as the ship docks, I'm going to get you cleared. If you're not off of the ship within 5 minutes after I clear you, I'm firing you. Do you understand? I said, yeah, I understand. So I went down, took a shower, and dressed up. And the captain said to me, well, you're clear to go. So I'm going down the gangplank, and I get down to the bottom, and there's a guard there. And he stopped me. He said, where do you think you're going? I said, I'm going home. He said, you can't leave. And I said, look up there. So the Coast Guard man up there said to him, okay, he's cleared. So I ran out, got on a taxi, went to the railroad station. I got there at 5 minutes to 8. The train left at 8 o'clock. So I got on the train and I went home. And my wife was crying and all that. Oh, we lost the house. What the hell do you give a damn about the house? As long as you, the kid, and the dog are okay, forget about everything else. We can replace everything, but we can't replace life. So that was one of the incidents I've had.
So the house was it totally destroyed?
Oh, yeah.
Where were they staying?
With my daughter.
Okay.
Down in Naugatuck.
How
Yeah.
long did it take? What did they? What did you do after?
Well, I stayed home for 2 weeks because the ship went from New York down to Philly, Baltimore, and Norfolk, and then back up. When they came back, I went back on the ship and I went back out again. And in the meantime, my brother and a bunch of people that he had came over, and they tore the house down to the foundation. And then they hired builders to build it up. And so we got this here now.
What's this house? Now, was it difficult being away from your family?
Kind of, yeah.
How long were you out at sea for before you'd be able to come home? And because you had little kids, right?
5 or 6 weeks.
Okay.
That'd be a round trip to Europe and back. And then you figure about a week or 2 weeks going down the coast to load up the ship. And then you'd make another trip. And if I wanted to quit, I could quit and come home. But if you stayed on the ship for a whole year, you got 2 weeks vacation with pay. But I usually would try to stay on for 1 year, and then I'd quit that one and get another one going somewhere else, you know. And then as time went on, the rate went up. It'd be like 3 weeks, and then it was 4 weeks, and Now I think it's 3 months or so. They get vacation with pay.
Was your family able to visit you wherever your boat was, if it was docked somewhere?
Well, I've had my wife come down to Philadelphia. I've had her come down to New York. Yeah.
So where it was close or local.
Yeah.
That's good. I bet your kids were happy to see you.
Oh, yeah. In fact, the kids always say, when are we going to see Dad? When are we going to see Dad? Because she'd say, when he comes in, we're going down to see him. And he'd always want to go down because he wanted to go to New York because he'd never been on subways and stuff like that, you know. Yeah.
So can you tell me about the day that your service ended, your final discharge after a long service?
It was just a regular day. I just packed it up and I said, well, I got my 20 years in, so I might as well get out. And I went down and signed up and got my discharge and all that, and signed up for my pension and everything. And now I'm getting a pension from the union, and I'm getting my Social Security and all that.
And this was 1972, correct?
Yeah.
Why did you choose then to be discharged? Why not?
Well, I've had over 20 years, you know, and it was about time to get out. And I figured I'd come home and go to work here. And I got a job as an electrician, and I worked as an electrician for the rest of the time. And then when I became 62, I said, that's it. I'm not going to work anymore, so I retired completely. And here I am.
Did you have to go to school to be an electrician when you came home?
No, I did a lot of electrical work on the ship.
Oh, so you had prior training.
I had a little bit. And a friend of mine knew an electrician, so he told this electrician that I was looking for a job. So he said, does he know anything about electrical work? Well, I never worked in a house. I worked on the ship. So he said, all right, we'll take him in, we'll train him. So they trained me on the job, you know. And it worked out pretty good.
How has your military experience influenced your thinking about war or the military in general?
I think it's terrible. War is one of the things I've always said was one of the worst things, like what's going on today. I just can't see it. It's really devastating.
Do you think you would enlist today if you were a young person?
If I was 19 again, I would go into the Merchant Marine rather than into the Armed Forces.
War is a different ballgame in these days.
And by the way, the Merchant Marine that were in World War II were giving medical from the Armed Forces now. In other words, we're signed up with the veterans.
Okay.
Yeah, they signed us up but only the ones from World War II, because these others are not wars.
Oh.
Vietnam is not a war.
Yeah, so they're not entitled to VA benefits?
Right. Vietnam was not a declared war. World War II was a declared war. Korea was not a declared war. Afghanistan is not a declared war. So the merchant seamen that are in these here will not get VA benefits. But the ones from World War II do get it. Yeah.
How did your service and experiences affect your life going forward?
Well, I've seen most of the world, and there's no place like the USA. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else but here. I've seen how they live in other countries, and I wouldn't want to live there. I'd like visiting, but I wouldn't want to live there. A visit of a week or two, all right, but the USA is the best there is. There's no country in the world that's any better than here. Yep.
Did you join any veterans organizations when you got home?
No.
No? All right, is there anything else you would like to add?
No,
that we
that's
haven't
about it.
in here? Very good. Well, Mr. Cristello, I'd like to thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And most importantly, thank you for taking the time to be interviewed today.
Uh-huh. I was happy to do so.